Okay, let's now turn to science. Okay, again, it's always kind of maybe nice or instructive to look at the origin of things. So where does Russian science come from? And of course, no doubt, we go back to the name of Mikhail Lomonosov, who is just given a credit to be a really first Russian scientist. He was born in a, I would say, not very rich family up north, close to the so-called White Sea. But since his young age, he somehow showed an interest to study, to learn new things, and he was sent to Moscow. At that time, of course, Moscow was not the center of science, but still somehow he also was able to make it to be sent to Germany. So then he learned a lot there, and he did a lot of things, in chemistry, in physics, mineralogy. He was the first to discover that Venus has an atmosphere. Yeah, he did this with telescope when Venus passed before the sun disk. So then you see how the shape is a little bit changed. So then he somehow gave an idea, okay, perhaps the Venus has an atmosphere. He was right. So he also wrote a lot of poetries, and actually he was maybe the first one who did create the basis of modern Russian literature language. And he also was a founder of the Moscow State University, which is now has a name, Lomonosov Moscow State University. So this is the main building of that Moscow State University. Okay, let me now switch to physics, because somehow this area is closer to me. Yeah, so again, maybe not too much can be said about Russian physics until 19th century. But then two very bright figures come out. Professor Stoletov from Moscow, he was known for this experimental research of photo effect. So in some ways, Einstein equation for photo effect perhaps was possible because of experimental jobs also done by Stoletov as well. And one more famous professor, Pyotr Lebedev, who was the first to discover and to measure the light pressure. So again, to some extent, this discovery was also one of those discoveries who, in fact, led people to quantum mechanics development, finally.
How much did he understand photoelectric effect before Einstein?
I'm not sure right now. Of course, no idea about quantum of light, definitely. Perhaps just kind of empirical.
Experimental.
Exactly, experimental data, yes, yeah. So not theoretical, but very thorough. At that time, measurements of this current and voltage, yeah, this effect, yeah. Okay, let's now go to 20th century. And quite a number of Nobel Prizes also were won by Russian physicists. So year 1958 comes first. And these three professors, Cherenkov, Frank, and Tam, they got this prize for discovery and explanation of the Cherenkov effect. So this was the first Nobel Prize in physics which was obtained, which was received by Soviet at the time scientists. Okay, then somehow a few years after, one more prize also went to USSR, very famous Lev Landau. He got the prize for his works on liquid helium and phenomena which are related with low temperature. Most unfortunately, 1 year before he got the Nobel Prize, he suffered a lot in a car accident. He really got very serious injuries. He was saved, but he could not recover completely to be as active as he was before. So it was kind of a very pity and very sad accident which took place. Okay, 2 years after, again, it was kind of a very good decade for Soviet physics. Two physicists, Professor Basov and Professor Prokhorov, they shared the Nobel Prize with American physicist Towns for invention of lasers. So also it was funny for me to know that Prokhorov was born in Australia. Then somehow his family moved to Russia. So it's kind of interesting thing, yeah. Well, 1978, one more prize also went to Russia. Pyotr Kapitsa, He got the prize for discoveries in the area of low temperature physics. What is also interesting, he got the prize in 1978 for his works which he did in late 20s, early 30s. So he got the prize kind of 50 years after he did the job. And also a funny story about him. In 1921, he went to Cambridge to the lab led by Professor Rutherford. And he asked him if it is possible or not to be hired, to get a job in your lab. Rutherford said to him, okay, no, I have 30 lab members at the moment, so I cannot offer you any position. Then Kapitsa was kind of very inventive to find a good answer. He asked Professor, what is the accuracy of your measurements? Professor did not feel anything, did not feel any kind of trap, and he said, okay, about 3% is okay. So then Kapitsa said to him, okay, 1% out of 30 is about 3%. So just if you take me to your lab, it is like accuracy of your measurements. Plus minus 1% is not a big deal. So Rutherford somehow did appreciate this joke, and he said, okay, yes, you are hired now. I mean, I give you a job. And then for more than 10 years, I think something like 15 years, they worked together, and they published a lot of joint papers, and finally Kapitsa got the Nobel Prize for his research on low temperature physics. Well, then 22 years were somehow missed. Then Zhorislav Svorov in the year of 2000 got his prize for his research on semiconductors. And also what is interesting, one more link with Japan. In the next year, he got a Kyoto Prize in Advanced Technology. Okay? Well, year of 2003, two academicians, most unfortunately they are passed away now, got their prize again for their works on superconductivity and superfluids. The works they did, I think, in late 50s. They were quite young at that time. Abrikosov was about 30 years something. Ginsburg was about 40 years something. So they published those papers in which they could develop very important aspects of theory of superconductivity. And then 50 years after that, they got their prize. Okay, and the most recent example, 2010, Andrei Geim and Novoselov, they got their prize for discovery of graphene structure. So I think Novoselov is one perhaps maybe of youngest Nobel Prize winners. Not the most youngest, but one of those who got the prize. He was about 36, I think, yeah. So not very old, yeah. So this is about Russian physics and science. Of course, again, I cannot give here a full overview of physics. And of course, I simply cannot touch here any other things, any other topics in science. Yeah. But now we switch to one more important topic, space research and space missions. It is well known that the first man to make a space journey was a Russian pilot, Yuri Gagarin. He did this in the year of 1961. He was just 27 years old. So then this is a famous series of so-called Soyuz, or Union in English, Union spacecrafts, which were very popular, I think, in the 70s and in the 80s. Each and every space mission from USSR was launched in these Soyuz spacecrafts. I also was surprised to find one more connection with Japan. The first Japanese to make a space journey was Toshihiro Akiyama. And he also did this with, at that time, Soviet space mission in the year of 1990. Yeah, and he was, that flight and, I mean, his mission was organized and just was held in this so-called Mir space station. It is now no longer in use. I think it was in the orbit for about kind of 30 years. And then it was just kind of, get rid of, and somehow it was just somehow drowned in Pacific. And it was replaced by a more advanced, more maybe bigger, much bigger space station, which is now shown, I think, in the next picture here. It is so-called International Space Station, which is now jointly used by a space agency from Russia, so-called Roscosmos, which means, Russian Cosmos, also NASA, also European Space Agency, Japan Aerospace Agency. So joint expeditions launched to this station. And just to give an idea about the size of that station, about 180 meters. So kind of a huge object just flies around the Earth. And the total weight is about 350 tons, so quite heavy and quite big. And a lot of experiments are being made now. And I think nowadays almost this station is never empty. I think just one expedition goes out, another comes in, and it kind of almost continuous use non-stop on this very long basis. Well, I think maybe my time is kind of close to almost over. So before we stop this kind of very short introduction to the Russian culture, what I would like again to remind you, we did start with this expression, nobody can embrace the unembraceable. And definitely we also could not be successful in doing this. And we have seen just a very few things which can be related to Russia and culture and science. And many things were left without any kind of discussion. For example, I said nothing about famous Russian ballet, which is very popular. I did not mention anything about painting. By the way, I think I saw some advertisement in Hyogo Museum of Art, Hyogo Prefecture. There is now exhibition of paintings from Russian museum, Hermitage Museum from St. Petersburg. So still there are this kind of exchange, between Russia and Japan, this painting exhibitions and so on. I said nothing about theater, which is also quite famous, and theater in Russia also has very long traditions, and it's also kind of the names of Stanislavski, for example, they are well known in the theater world. I said nothing about mathematics. I said nothing about history. I said nothing about geology. I said nothing about the relations of Russia with other countries. I simply did not have time. So just I hope you did learn maybe something new from this short overview I have given here. And of course, I would like to thank you for your attention. And also, I will try to do this also in Russian and in Japanese. Thank you.
Thank you very much.